I'm a really huge fan of useless information. I really enjoy investigating stuff that, quite honestly, probably has no bearing on living real life here on this planet. I just enjoy the idea of like researching and getting to know things that are probably typically useless to most people. Like, I love the idea of catchphrases, like where they come from and how they got to be in use. Stuff that we use on a daily basis that we have no idea where it came from. Take, for example, the catchphrase as dead as a doornail. It's something we say and honestly have no idea where it came from. But the reality is that this phrase has been around for a long time, probably all the way back to the 14th century, and that is a very, very long time. A doornail was a thick, flat-headed nail that was used on doors, and they did it for strength, to strengthen the door. Once the nail was driven through the door, the pointy end, which would be on the other side of the door, would be hammered flat up against the door on the other side, making it, apparently, dead. Also, the phrase crocodile tears. That's another saying that's been around for a long time, since probably around the 15th century. And it's a saying that most parents know very, very well, and that it alludes to fake crying. An ancient understanding is that crocodiles actually produce tears while they're devouring their prey. Their glands produce these tears to keep anything out of the eye, but definitely not for emotional purposes. Another saying is probably one of my favorites. It's Saved by the Bell, which is also a classic TV show, but that's for another time. This phrase probably actually became popular from boxing. The sport boxing? The round ending is signified by the ringing of a bell and, in a lot of cases, saving a beaten up boxer from going down. But there is another and maybe a little more far-fetched origin possibility, that of being saved from the grave, literally. In the late 1700s and throughout the 1800s, being buried alive was a real issue. Due to lack of medical advancements, it was actually kind of easy to assume that someone was dead when in fact they weren't. There were several patents made for devices attached to coffins to prevent being buried alive, all the way from 1800 to as late as 1955. In most of these patents, a rope would be attached to the inside of the coffin and run up through the ground to the bell above. If you suddenly woke up from your coma and noticed that you were lying flat in a box, well, just grab the rope and ring the bell. That's probably not the origin, but nonetheless funny. There's another catchphrase that's kind of popular in our culture. It's the catchphrase scapegoat, which is actually a word that's comprised of two words. You've got goat and then you've got scape, which is short for escape. So literally it means the goat that escaped or the goat that got away. It basically alludes to the idea that someone is going to take the blame for something that somebody else did. So that person would become the scapegoat. Now, in my first mini talk video, I taught about Yom Kippur, and that it is the Day of Atonement, or covering up our failures and our sins. And in that video, I talked about all these different animals, and specifically two goats. And these two goats would be used, and one of them would be used as the scapegoat. But I didn't go into like real super detail about that specifically. So I thought we would go back to Leviticus 16 and kind of talk about it a little further. And by the way, these instructions and directions that we find in Leviticus 16, they're not man-made. These are not just made up by human beings. These instructions are coming directly from God himself, because these are instructions and directions that we have to do, they had to do in those times, to cover for failure. So the priest used a young bull, a ram, and then two goats. Remember these guys? The young bull was offered for the priest's sins. In this case, it was Aaron. So the young bull was an offering for his sins. And then there was this ram, and the ram was an offering and used as an offering for burnt offering, which was kind of the typical generic daily offering. And then we come to these two goats. They were both male goats, and they both are very, very similar. And they were brought in front of the tabernacle, and Aaron would then cast lots on these two goats. So in our days, we probably would see it like, throwing dice or maybe flipping a coin. It's basically the same idea. Which one of these goats would be used as a sacrifice for the sin offering for the people, and then which one would be established as the scapegoat. And once they figured that out, Aaron would then take that scapegoat, this goat, he would place his hands on it, and he would verbally confess the failures of all the people in general, not every person's specific sin. That would take forever. But what he was essentially doing was he was transferring the sin, the failures from all of the people now onto this goat. Now, in the original Hebrew, there's this word, the word is Azazel. And it's in some of our modern translations, and some they kind of leave it out because it's a little confusing. Because Azazel is kind of a strange word. It can mean a specific person, it could mean a specific place, and honestly, we really don't know what it means. We have a goat that's meant for the Lord, right? And that goat is going to be the sacrifice. The other goat, the scapegoat, is meant for Azazel. And so therefore, it's going to be let loose into the wilderness. Now, we know for a fact that all throughout the Bible, anytime you see the phrase or word wilderness, it's not a good thing. The wilderness is not a great place. It's also kind of known as the desert, right? A place where like nothing grows and it's just a bad place. They kind of see it as like where the wild things are, right? Or maybe more along the lines of like the things that are unholy, they belong in the wilderness. I mean, we see the Israelites wandering the wilderness for 40 years. We see Jesus going to the wilderness so he could be tempted by the devil. So whatever Azazel is, it's not great. And this scapegoat is taking the sins of the people into the wilderness, the failures of the people into the wilderness where failures belong. Another thing that I said in the video was that Jesus was the atoning sacrifice, right? He became that atoning sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice, right? So he became the cure for the sin problem, which was actually more of a disease. Because the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, really was more like a Band-Aid covering the disease. It didn't really go away. Jesus came as a sacrifice, and he actually cured the problem. So he was the sacrifice, but he was actually also the scapegoat as well. Now, he wasn't really referred to as a goat, unless he was the goat in all caps. See what I did there? Anyway. But he was referred to as a lamb that took away the sins, the failures of the world. He took those things away. And that's found in John chapter 1. This guy named John the Baptizer uttered them. There he was, the lamb. He was going to take the sins away. So Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice, that's for sure, and he cured the sin problem. But he was also the scapegoat because he took our failures and our sins to the wilderness or the grave. So instead of us having to take our own failures with us throughout our lives to our graves, Jesus took them to the grave for us. And that thought should make us incredibly grateful. All of us here in America are about to partake in a Thanksgiving meal. We'll gather with family and loved ones. We'll eat, we'll play games, we'll watch movies, and we'll be super grateful that we have each other. At our house, we'll be eating our traditional Thanksgiving meal too. A turkey breast cooked in a crock pot for 7 hours, mashed potatoes, corn pudding, broccoli cheese casserole, yeast rolls, and Robin's mom's famous cranberry sauce straight from the can. I love that food tradition. I mean, it's actually making me hungry right now, thinking about it. I mean, that day and that meal, which will be tomorrow, is all about being thankful and grateful. And we've got a lot to be grateful for here in America. We have our country, number one. We have our freedom. We have our family. We have our loved ones. We have our jobs, and etc. But there are a lot of people in this world, and actually some people even in our own country, that don't have any of those things. So instead of being mindful or thankful or grateful for the material things, and those things are great, okay, they're great, maybe we should just take a step deeper and really be mindful and thankful and grateful for the fact that we don't have to live our lives. We don't have to go through life knowing that we've got to take all of our failure and our blame and our sin to our own graves. Jesus did that already. He took our failures, our sins, and all the blame. He took the blame as the scapegoat to where blame and sin and failure belongs. He became the ultimate scapegoat. And I think that is something that we should be truly, truly thankful and grateful for.